What's going on, beautiful people? Thank you for returning back to the channel on therootwave.com. In this episode, I have Kasinator. Please say hello to the audience and let us know where we can find you, please.
Hello, you can find me on Instagram as Kasinator Visuals and my website, kasinatorvisuals.com.
Awesome. I really appreciate you being on the channel. We've done work together before, and you also released a project recently that is very inspiring. So what I wanted to do is have you on the channel today so that way we can discuss a little bit about your work, a little bit about the Bronx too, because we do a lot of work here as well, and then some about your project. So let's start off first with what it is that you do, please.
So I'm a photographer. I consider myself a visual artist as well, a Z maker, and a bunch of other kind of in-betweens. I have many hats. But yeah, I mean, what I do is I document the Bronx. I also document, I guess, like real life situations besides the Bronx, within the Bronx. And the whole idea of what I do is I've always photographed with the idea that everything that I show is in a real life situation. It's more of very raw, very telling, and it allows for people to see like the true sense of what's going on, and things that we kind of don't really know, like, you know, like kind of like see on the regular. So if you walk by something every day and I photograph it and you never realized it was there before, kind of thing. But yeah, I think my work also just kind of is based on telling the truth, showing it like it is, and putting the Bronx more on the map by showing that it's a kind of crazy at times, but it's a great place to live. You know, if you're from here and stuff like that. And yeah, that's what I do.
Now, Is it, so it's photography? Do you do other forms of media, artwork?
Not so much like different artwork. I mean, I do like graphics and things like that, but that's kind of when I'm like promoting my things or kind of making stuff for other people. But I am also a writer. I consider myself a writer as well. And with my visual arts, since I use photography in every sense, I also do like zines and books, and I put my work onto there. So I guess I kind of do I do self-publishing and stuff. And the most recent project, I curated a bunch of different works. So that was my first time setting that up. So I guess curation is another hat on there too, you know?
Yeah, it's important because I think people who are creative wear more than one hat, and I think this era has allowed for that, because before you had to be only one thing. Mm-hmm. So now it's like, hey, you could do it all, and it's okay because it all falls onto some type of creativity. Can you tell me a little bit about how your creativity started, where it started, how long have you been in that creative field, and possibly also what it took for you to actually express yourself? Because I feel like a lot of people that I have on my channel, including myself, you know, it was a journey to actually be able to express yourself, because people can't express themselves freely like they would want to. So if you could just give us a little bit of that, please.
Yeah. So I am a self-taught photographer. So I taught myself, well, I had help, obviously, you know, my mom and stuff gave me the camera, showed me where to press the button. But from there, I started learning about cameras on my own, and always taking pictures, and always kind of wanting new little cameras like the Polaroids back then, and different disposables and stuff like that. So I always had a camera in hand. I was always kind of documenting myself, my toys, my little cousins, stuff like that. And as I got older, I think photography wasn't like a forethought. It was something that was just kind of always like there in my life. And it wasn't until I knew I wanted to incorporate photo into stuff, but I didn't know that I could really go to school for it. So I went to Penn State first. And when I went to Penn State, I wanted to do communication. So I wanted to do something along the lines of eventually writing or doing journalism and then incorporating photography or, things of that nature. So then when I came home from Penn State, I didn't get to finish there, unfortunately. But when I did come back home, I decided to go to the School of Visual Arts. And from there, that's what started my photography career. That's what like pushed it out there in the very forefront of everything. So once I got there, I ended up learning more of the technical things that I've never really knew before, learning about the lighting and everything that kind of, I guess when you're doing it yourself, you don't really think about or really like know. You're just kind of fooling around and you're just creating things from there. So from that, I think it then started pushing me more to put my work out there, my stuff. And even at SBA is where I learned my zine making and everything from a wonderful teacher that I had named Ellen Wallenstein. She was like pushed me to do a lot of my documentary work. I had another teacher also that pushed me to photograph the Bronx. Unfortunately, she's not here with us anymore, but Jenny Williams was a big inspiration too on making sure that I photographed the true meaning of the Bronx and looking around in my environment and how can I show the Bronx in such a great way. And I think that those two women in particular really pushed me in great ways in that school to really like help me to get to where I am now, to make sure that I'm documenting in the correct way.
No, that's awesome, because I think all of that is important, and also it's a sign of the universe kind of putting everything in your favor, helping you with the right people, and then also the creativity. As you were saying all of this, I had a question that I'm like, damn, I never asked anyone else on this channel, so you're gonna be the first one. But how do you explain? Okay, so I like taking photography too, right? So I'll take pictures and I'll get some dope shit. But a lot of it is something that I feel I'm seeing that no one else is seeing. So how do you feel that creativity, where do you feel that comes from? What does it feel like? And why is it that only you can see that and not the person right next to you?
That's a good question, actually. I think that kind of goes with the idea of like how I think of it is like my mind creates these pictures, or like when I'm using my eyes, my eyes are also lenses. So what I do is I end up just kind of seeing things, and it creates the picture for you. Like, but the other thing is that the environment has created this and brought this to you. So you know what I'm saying? And then you're like, oh shit, like look, like and you want to be like, look to someone else, and everybody's like, what? You know what I mean? So I think that I think it just comes with being a creative. Like, even if you're like dabbling in photography, that doesn't mean that you can't see things the way that other photographers do. But all photographers are different. So you may see something that I didn't notice, and it comes out a fire shot on your end. And if I were to try to reproduce the picture, it wouldn't be the same thing. So, you know what I mean? So it's the same idea of like, I just always think of it as the eyes are lenses, especially if you're a photographer. Like, I'll see myself seeing things happening and I'm like, wow, that would have been a dope picture, but I don't have my camera on me. Or if I do, and I take a picture, I sometimes realize that like my eyes took a better picture than I would get with the camera lens. So that's something else too that I kind of keep in mind, that maybe something that I see will not look good on like a camera or through the lens, that it's only going to look through like these lenses, you know? So yeah, so that's something that I think it happens. It's just something that it's such a moment, like a Cartier-Bresson kind of thing of like the decisive moment. So it's one of those of like, wow, like, shit, I just saw this and I gotta snap it, or I gotta take a picture, something. And if it happens, it happens. Sometimes you end up missing it, you know what I mean? And then other times it's just kind of created for you. Like, that's how I feel. It was there for you at that moment.
No, that's awesome, and that's a good explanation because that's how I feel sometimes. So I'm like, you don't see it, and then sometimes you're right. Like you miss it. You're like, God, man. Sometimes you'll think about it. Sometimes like years later, you're like, remember that shot I missed? Like, yeah, it happens. Now you mentioned something about your mom giving you helping you with the camera and stuff, and I always like to ask creative people that I have on the channel about their childhood, how their childhood has either helped them or assisted them in being creative. But also another question that I think I've never asked anyone, and something that I'm noticing in patterns, with people, is that some of the people that have had like a rough childhood or a rough upbringing might be the more of a creative person. So if you wouldn't mind, you don't have to get too detailed, but just kind of like, do you feel that your creativity was supported as a child and that's why you're now? Or do you feel that there was also things in your life that might have caused some type of, I don't know, distress in life that also built the creativity side?
Whoa, that's a loaded answer. But no, I mean, I grew up with my mom, my grandma, and my aunt, and living in the same household with them. My grandma was also into art, and she would sit down and she would draw with me, and she would do all these like cool like little paintings, like little things that I always wish that I could do. And she would sit with me and she would do all those things with me and stuff. And I think that's also what sparked a lot of creativity. Like I saw my grandma also like crocheting and knitting, and that in itself is an art. So I think having my grandma not call herself an artist, but be an artist herself, was something that I really, I think that's what really kind of always gave me the confidence in just doing and just being myself and things like that. And my mom and my aunt were always very supportive of everything that I've done. So I think it wasn't, I don't know if for them they realized that like I could make a career out of photography like that, because I didn't. But I don't think I've ever asked. You know what I'm saying? I just, looking through magazines or whatever, like you just, as a kid, you don't really know what it is, or like it's just kind of there for you, you know what I mean? But I don't think I asked those questions. So for them knowing that I loved photos, and then me not realizing that I could go to an art college instead of going somewhere else, I could have just gone there, first. So I think because of that, I don't feel like I had the correct answers at first of like, okay, I could definitely go to an art college, I can get my career started, I could do all these things. And it wasn't until I decided and I kind of put that out there, you know what, like maybe this is what I should be doing instead. And sorry, I kind of went on this path, but now I'm going on this one, and once I let them know, they were very supportive, and they were like, okay, if this is what you want to do, that's cool. Like they've always been 100% behind me. But I just think that it wasn't, I think for us too, as Latinos, and like we're from the Bronx and stuff like that, like everything about us also has to do with like hustling and doing like XYZ 1 2 3 4, you know what I'm saying? Like we have to do so much more than a bunch of other people. So like I feel like to being told like, yeah, like I could do anything I want to, but also not realizing that I could really do everything that I want to. Oops, sorry. So that kind of then gets into the thing of like, well, I didn't really know. And then they were like, well, we didn't really know that that's what you wanted to really do. So, oops, my light is going off. But yeah, it gets into one of those things where it's like, okay, well, maybe then, this is how you gotta deal with it, like you have to just do so much more as a woman, as an artist. Like there's so many factors to this, and I think that in this case I just went with it, and they just went with it. There wasn't anything that, like, my creativity I think was just always there. It wasn't anything that needed to be done more. I just needed that little push to just know that it was there, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Now that we're talking about the Bronx, what has been your experience with the Bronx? Do you have any stories or anecdotes that you would want to share with us? And then what has been the response to your work from the Bronx?
Hmm. Well, in that sense, I think the Bronx. That's another loaded question. My work with the Bronx was always meant to be very realistic as to like what's going on and to not have any issues with telling it like it is, I think. I think that's a big factor that people get kind of scared about what they're saying or showing when it comes down to our our borough and things like that, you know, because I feel like people don't want to have I think people don't want to have like any issues with showing something incorrect, or you know what I mean. So my whole thing is my whole thing with working with my photos is to get realistic moments, let the photograph kind of do the talking and do the work. Um, but I think that I've had moments though where I've had my work kind of questioned as like, oh, well, why would you take a photo like this showing whatever it is? You know what I'm saying? Like showing things in a slightly negative light, you know what I'm saying? And then I've also had people be like, wow, thank you for showing this, because a lot of people don't realize that this is how it looks, you know, especially on the rise of gentrification. Like when I was doing this work in SVA, the talks of the rise of gentrification was around, and you know, we were having nice buildings going up, and then we have them really nice, and then we have the next block is really like destroyed looking, or it's like not up to par. So how can you have one side looking great and then the other, literally the next block over is like shit, you know? And I had people say like, wow, like thank you for showing that these things are changing, that our neighborhoods are looking like this, and then one side looks like this, the other looks like that, you know? And then I had like an unsupportive teacher in SVA, my thesis teacher, and they didn't really like the work that I was making. They didn't like the work because they didn't understand it and where I came from and what I was doing and why I wanted to like show this. So when I would come in with this work every week or every odd week, whatever, that I had to show work, it'd be like, why can't you show us things that we know? Like show us Yankee Stadium, or like show us the Bronx Zoo, or places that you can easily Google, you know what I mean? And that's something that I thought was really fucked up, because I was like, how can I express myself as a person who actually lives in the Bronx and as a person who actually like who has lived here all my life, and then like you want me to show you things that you can see when you just Google, you know what I'm saying? Like, fine, maybe you don't know that this is the Bronx because you're not familiar with here, but like this is my life, and like this is where I've like grown up, and this is all I see and all I know. So it's like, that's why I make sure that in the way that I document, I have to be very honest with what I put out there. And it doesn't, a lot of people like it, and a lot of people kind of are like iffy about it, because they're just like, well, if you're showing it this way, are you going to these neighborhoods, or are you doing this or that? And it's like, sometimes, yeah, if I could get over there, or if I'm in that area and hell yeah. But other times it's like most of the photos that are being taken in different areas are just kind of like snippets. It doesn't actually mean like I've spent hours in this neighborhood and that I'm getting the very true nature of it. It'll just kind of be like an outsider's look, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy doing what you love, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's it's a roller coaster, because
yeah,
you get it from all sides, and then sometimes it's hard to even have people see what you see. or understand it, and it's very conflicting, especially for somebody who's creative. You're like, ah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Now you just came out with a project. If you wouldn't mind just telling us about it and elaborating on what's going on with that project, please.
Yeah, so I created a zine. Well, created and curated, I think is better. I put out an open call in April for people's artwork during the pandemic. And it grew into something really big and really dope where I had 35 artists, myself included, is in there, and 34. And they're from around the world, around the United States. And it became a bigger thing than what I actually thought would happen when I put the open call out. And it was for everybody to express themselves on how they feel about the pandemic, the uncertainty surrounding it. It also coincided with the protests and everything that was happening with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that too, which, racial inequality and all that stuff is another pandemic in itself. So it was like everything kind of came together and all these themes started connecting even more. And so I ended up at first I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. Like if I wanted to put it out online or like how can I have people like see this? But what I ended up doing was I had people still sending me stuff even like in the beginning of June. So I just kind of like let it roll and everything. And then I made it into a physical like manifestation of something, meaning that like COVID was also a physical thing. You know what I'm saying? So for our feelings and everything to come together the way that it did, into now a zine, it worked out the way that it did, which was nice.
Awesome. And then where can we find that?
So you can order it through blurb.com. It's on Blurb's bookstore. So if you search with space between us, that's what it's called, you'll be able to find it. It's $25. And the whole idea of that too is because it's coinciding with everything going on, I'm putting the profits towards COVID Relief Fund and the Black Artist Fund. The Black Artist Fund also gives grants towards Black and Brown art students to continue their ongoing projects, which is nice.
Awesome. Yeah, you're doing the work, and that's awesome. Yeah. What do you see in the future for your work and what you're doing? Not only with the Bronx, but just your work in general. Where do you plan to go? Do you have any 3-5 year plans? Any big projects that you can speak about also?
That's a good one. Well, in the future, I always want to be a photographer, so that's something that's there. But I mean, for the future of like what I'm doing, I think I also really like curating the way that I set this zine together. And I'm hoping that I could do another zine that will be different, you know what I'm saying? Like, or I'll do another open call because we're still in a coronavirus town, you know what I'm saying? Like we're still dealing with this every day, and it's like things aren't really changing. So I was thinking of maybe doing like a volume 2 or something to that effect. But with the idea of curating, I acquired 4 little plastic cameras, and a project that I want to speak about too that I'm doing is I sent them to 4 artists so far, and the cameras will get recycled. They're 35 millimeter cameras, so they're film, and I will send them to different artists, and then whatever work they produce with that camera will get processed and scanned and everything, cleaned up, whatever, and put in another zine, like showing off their work. So that's something that I'm really interested in kind of putting together next, or that's the next like project that I'm doing in terms of curation. But in the future, I just think I want to have my own studio, want to be able to like produce more work and things like that. Something else that I had an idea of is to, if I were to acquire a studio or things like that, is to help out people with being able to like not get photo shoots, to have like profiles on LinkedIn or professional headshots, things like that. That was something that I spoke about like last year, that I wrote down on like a futuristic plan of, I wanted to be able to help out other people who aren't able to like get those photo shoots and put their work out there to get jobs, to get more business for whatever, if they have a small business or something to that effect. But I also like being able to kind of roll with it at times. So I don't think I've always had a full complete plan. I just know that I want to continue photographing. I want to continue making my zines and my books and just kind of putting my shit out there.
Awesome. I don't want to take up too much of your time. If you wouldn't mind just telling us one more time where we can find your work or follow you, please.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Kasinator Visuals. It's one word, no lines, no spaces, nothing. And my website is also kasinatorvisuals.com. So you'll be able to find my stuff there.
Awesome. I'm going to put all that information below so that way people can go follow you and also go check you out. Before I let you go, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a real quick send off, something motivational, something inspiring that you feel that you would want to tell the people watching this, so that way, I don't know, they get things started for themselves, even if it's that creatively, business wise, motivate them and inspire them to actually do something. Please.
Okay. Thank you for having me today. This is nice. I do want to say to anybody who's starting out to follow your dreams, even if it sounds kind of corny. Just continue to always push, because that little push, that little bit of extra hustle will have somebody notice, and that somebody will put your work out there to somebody else, and the cycle will get you to where you want to be, and keep networking and keep putting your stuff out there. Even if you fail, failure is good. Failure never hurts. And yeah, just always stay true to yourself and know that what it is that you want to do, that you continue to have that passion for what it is.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the channel. People like you are very inspiring, because you guys are actually doing the work regardless of what anyone is telling you, so you're actually doing it. And I feel like we need more people like that. And it's beautiful, because we're in a time where more and more people are expressing themselves, not giving a fuck, doing what they want to do, and actually creating some masterpieces or even things that are inspiring other people to actually get things done. So I really appreciate you being on the channel.
Thank you.
Really, really do. And to my audience, please go support. I'm going to put all the information below. Please go follow and go buy some prints. Go get the new book. It's awesome. I promise you. And please go check out more interviews at therootwave.com. Thank you very much, and I'll see you around. Bye.
therootwave.com